Welcome to the Good Stuff podcast, brought to you by From Creative Agency. Each episode we talk to good people doing good stuff. Hi Nick, welcome to the Good Stuff podcast. It's lovely to have you here.
Lovely to be here, thank you for having me.
That's all right. So perhaps you could just start by just introducing yourself.
Okay, so I'm Nick Bromley from Nick Bromley Accountancy. I've got 17 years experience in practice and decided to start up on my own to do things a little differently.
Great. And perhaps we could start by that little bit of difference, because I think that's sort of something that I really enjoy, to kind of getting to know as we've got to know you and the way that you work. I think there's something really lovely in that. So could you talk a little bit about what that means?
Yeah, so I think accountancy as a whole is kind of seen as a suit and tie, a bit corporate affair, where it might be a bit nerve-wracking to go and meet your accountant and sit across the table and get kind of pulled across the coals on things. So it's taking more of a holistic approach, more of a casual approach to building that client-accountant relationship. So any telephone calls, just pick up the phone, just call with a query. Don't let it kind of cost you sleep. Worry about it for 6 months, and then ultimately we have a chat and it's 5 minutes and the problem's solved. And the other thing that the industry tends to do is bill by time as well. So clients aren't always aware of what the cost will be for a piece of work. So I use a fee matrix and take my clients or prospects through that matrix to churn out a fixed fee proposal for them, so that they know from day one what the fee will be for that piece of work. And that just helps build that trust and that relationship, really, so that they're not worried that they're going to get a bill on the doorstep that they weren't expecting and then budgeted for. And also spread that fee over the year monthly, so that client doesn't have their accountancy fee, tax fee, VAT fee all land at the same time, and then perhaps money that they'd got pigeonholed for something else is all of a sudden gone.
So it really is pitching it so that you can be, a really supportive business partner, really, to those that you work with, really understanding. And how long has the business been going?
I am in month 9 now, so not too long.
But you're doing super well?
It's going, it's really picked up now, which is really nice. And also I've only had 2 clients come from my previous work as well. So all of my other clients are completely new to me, putting their trust in me, having not known me before.
Brilliant.
So that again plays in with when I meet with clients, having that chat with them, discussing how I like to work, how do they work, and finding communication channels that are beneficial for both of us. So sometimes people aren't great on emails. I know myself, sometimes, you take a phone call or you've got another piece of work. So some clients prefer WhatsApp for the non-confidential things or the little prompts to action things. So it's just building that relationship that works for both of us, so that I can nudge people without them feeling that I'm on their back all the time. Was it
a scary leap kind of to go out on your own, or did it feel like the only one to make?
So I'm quite risk adverse, really, all my life.
Well, most accountants are, aren't they, really?
Quite prudent, quite careful person. So it wasn't an easy decision. I had thought about it for a good few years, and then through one thing or another, and my wife's support urging me to do it, saying that if it doesn't work out, you can always just go and get a job again. The time was right for a number of reasons to go out on my own. So handed that notice in, and then kind of the panic starts. But you're like a duck. You're trying to be calm on the water, and then underneath you're frantically, because you don't want anyone to know that that you've got those concerns and those. So you try and be calm on the surface. And then I had one client who wanted to work with me for a while, and never came across to the last practice I worked at. And he basically said, as soon as you start up, I'm on board. and it's such a lovely
That's
chat.
amazing.
Yeah, really supportive. Really, really nice man. And as soon as I'd started up, he's like, right, let's get the standing order sorted. Let's get the letter of engagement. Come round, let's get you started. So I couldn't have asked for
So you know
nicer.
someone had complete faith in you and your services and everything that you stand for. That's so fantastic to have that early on, because that's that bedrock of like confidence, isn't it? That you can go, okay, we're off.
Yeah, so I'd acted for him in a previous job. And then that firm had been acquired by a larger firm, and they'd then been acquired by a larger firm, and he hadn't got that personal touch with the accountant. I don't think he'd actually met the accountant that was signing off his documents. He was meeting the juniors or the semi-seniors, but not the director. And it didn't work for him, so he knew that I wanted to bring back that personal touch. Yes, I use the latest technology that I can to have efficiencies for myself, and in turn that benefits the clients because I'm not spending so long on their work. But it's having that personal touch.
Yeah.
And, you know, he calls me up and we'll have a chat for 40 minutes or something because he likes a good natter.
Yeah.
But I don't document the time, and I'll never bill him for it.
Yeah,
you know,
that's great.
he just likes to get things off his chest, and he's like a solopreneur, so he doesn't have anyone else to bounce off. So I'll just pop my earbuds in and then just carry on doing some emails, whatever, and have a natter with him. And we've got a really nice rapport, so...
That's great. And he was right there from the beginning, so he's got, you know, that first client is always a really important one in your kind of story, no matter who it is, isn't it? I guess.
That's it. Yeah.
So for someone someone who is risk averse, and knowing that you were kind of really kind of putting all the wheels in motion to go on your own, were there certain kind of key things that you did, or books that you read, or podcasts that you listened to, or people that you met that made you go, no, I actually do need to do this?
Yeah, so it was probably 2 years in the making before I actually handed my notice in. And a lot of that, as you say, was listening to podcasts from industry leaders, reaching out to people who'd already made that leap. And so some of the podcasts I was listening to were Mark Wickersham, Value Pricing Academy. So Mark Wickersham ran a chartered accountancy practice in the 90s. And his business model was, when a potential client comes in, ask them to bring their accounts with them. He would talk to them and they wouldn't know what he was doing, but he was looking down to see what the accountancy fee was for the last accountant, and he would just undercut it by 10%. So he was winning work like hand over fist, just constantly winning new work, growing the practice, but actually underselling himself and being a busy fool. So he was underpricing the work, undervaluing himself and his staff, running at a loss, couldn't see why things were going so wrong. And then he found out about value pricing from a chap called Ron Baker. And so that's looking at the value exchange. So what does the client get for the work that I'm undertaking? Like the age-old story of, it might only take me an hour to do, but that's because I've been doing it for 20 years.
Exactly, yeah.
You know, and you guys, any industry really, when you look at what you can add value to for the client, price your work fair. So fair for the value exchange. We're not looking to overcharge and do anyone an injustice, but we all want the best value out of that relationship. So he was one for sure. There's a few other accountancy industry leaders, and then there's various business podcasts as well. But I went and met with a chap called Neil Criddle, who Neil had been made redundant 3 times. And the last one was in January or March 2020, so just before COVID hit.
That's a tough time for that to happen.
Yeah. And he'd always wanted to run his own practice, but always worked in industry. So I've always worked in an accountancy practice. He'd always worked in an accounts department of a business. And he took the leap and decided, right, I've got this much buffer in the bank, I'm going to go for it. And he grew his business phenomenally quick because he, with COVID, all the grants, all the furlough, everything like this, none of the local accountancy firms around him were publicising that, going on Facebook and letting people know. So he's just a genuinely nice chap. He's going online, spreading all this information for free.
Giving back.
That's it. And so people saw how nice he was and that he wanted to help people and came on board. So I went and met with him in September 2023 when I had one client. and just had a chat with him, had a coffee, and he's just as nice in person as he is online.
Yeah.
And we keep in touch. I saw him the other month. So we kind of congratulate each other on how we're doing.
That's great.
Yeah. And he's the same. He's just casual, build the relationships. And if it works for both of you, then, it should work overall.
That's brilliant to have that kind of value promise underpinning everything that you do as well. So you must feel really proud of what you've built in the short time that you've been going. Do you give you a chance ever to stop and say that to yourself?
Not really.
No.
I think so. I've had a nice upbringing. I've always had a job. Gone from one job to another, no problem. Everything's kind of almost. It's not come easy, but I've taken it in my stride.
Yeah.
So exams and everything else. So I never really stopped to think you're doing anything that someone else wouldn't do or couldn't do. So no, I've not stopped and thought, actually, I'm doing quite well now.
What's the vision then for? Because at the moment you're obviously, a one-man band.
Yeah.
What's the vision for the accountancy? Because you obviously come from a big agency, and it's exactly. You're countering that approach, aren't you, in your whole vision and ethos and how you run the business. So how do you grow but maintain that, do you think?
So at the moment, my thoughts are to put a ceiling on growth at a certain level. And at the moment, that level is, I would like to aspire to have a team of 3 or 4 like-minded people who, as much as it's a job, and it's 9 to 5 or whatever hours it transpires to be, it's actually a career for them, and they want to do the work, they enjoy the work and service the clients well. And I think when you've got a team of 3 or 4, you can keep track of everything, you can oversee everything, you can make sure what's going out the door you're happy with, because ultimately it's my name, above the door. So I want to make sure that what's going out is to the quality that it should be. And I've managed teams before, and I know that when you get to a certain level it's really hard to keep track, but at the same time I want those people, and as I say, I want people that don't just see it as a job, because I want them to take ownership, and me to be able to trust them. It's not, I don't want people to have to be in the office 9 to 5 Monday to Friday. I want people to take ownership of their work, and if we say, okay, let's get this work done this week, then if they need to fit it round taking the kids to school or going to a school play or sports day or doctor's appointment, because I've been...
Place the human being at the centre of the work that you do.
I've been chained to my desk, and seen my tie as a bit of a collar, like keeping me in place, keeping me in check.
Yeah.
And I know what it feels like. And now, kind of having gone on my own, and I do work ridiculous hours, last night I was up till 2, but that's my choice. It's my business.
And you're you're building something, aren't you, for yourself and for others and for your family, and it's first year of business particularly.
But at the same time, like I took my daughter to school this morning. I could walk her to school and not worry that I'm going to get judged for being 15 minutes late in the office.
Yeah.
I always tell people though that since going on my own, I've got the worst boss ever. That's the hours that I impose on myself.
Yeah.
They are crazy, but I enjoy it. That's the other thing. Like, I could be sat there playing PlayStation, watching a film or whatever, but you probably know your brain is just
constantly thinking about it. It sounds like, one of the key drivers for kind of leaving was kind of a culture, the culture within, but also the culture of client relationships. So I guess now you're able to control that. Is that a really empowering place to be, to go, this is who we are, this is how we treat our customers, and when we bring somebody else on board, these are the values that we're gonna employ against as well. Yeah.
So I wouldn't really say anything against, and not that you're trying to get me to do it, obviously, but I wouldn't say anything against my last employers, because that's how they wanted to do it, and they do it well, and that's what they do. But it's building that relationship with people that I wasn't able to before, because I was clocking every 15 minutes of my day. Had to either go to a client or go to admin or something, and so ultimately you get pulled up on where your time's been spent, what you've billed, what the recovery percentages are, profits and so on. Whereas I feel that if you price the client correctly, and taking them through that pricing matrix where I'm asking them questions about their business
Yeah.
that allow me to work out how much time I can commit, then having them call up randomly for 5 minutes doesn't really matter. You know, they're priced correctly for the package.
Yeah.
So, for instance, I wouldn't want every client to do this, but I had a new client a couple of months ago, and in the first fortnight I must have had, 10, 15 emails, 10, 15 phone calls.
Okay.
But they had a lot of services that they were carrying over from another provider. So to make sure that those services came across smoothly for them.
Had to be present for it.
Yeah, that's it. And ease any concerns they had.
And new clients, that first month of a new client kind of onboarding is always more work, isn't it? Because you're kind of bringing them into the fold, you're starting up new processes with them. So I guess being able to make the decision to go, I don't necessarily need to clock how much this is costing. I just know it has to be done right.
Yeah, you build that relationship.
Yeah.
And there's no falsities. You're actually trying to work with them and work for their benefit.
Yeah.
But hopefully in return, they'll be a client for a number of years. So, as much as you might say, I want to bill them X amount for those phone calls, those emails, the onboarding. Well, actually, if they're a client with you for 5, 10 years, there's a lot of value there.
Yeah.
So, just lose that time. Don't worry about that time. And
because it's such an important job that you're doing, isn't it? I suppose a lot of people kind of go, oh, it's accountancy, it's a necessary evil, just hand over documents, let's just get it done, let's move forward. But actually what you're trying to do, and doing successfully already, is go, actually, if we have a relationship and we work together, there's so much more that I can give you. And it's about growth, isn't it? Business growth, business support. Just by asking a question about what you can do with your money could just unlock something that could be transformational for businesses.
Yeah, so as much as I could do the compliance, so get the accounts done, get them filed at Companies House, tax return at HMRC, VAT to HMRC, that doesn't add value apart from keeping them out of prison. And that, that's quite valuable. Sleep at night, not worry that the tax man's going to come knocking at your door. It does add value in that respect. But that's limited. There is a ceiling, and the ceiling is everything's compliant, everything's done as it should be. And I can do the compliance, but what I'd rather do is work with passionate business owners to try and help them to grow the business, whether that be, let's just improve profit margins, or whether that be, what are your aspirations? Do you want to grow in volumes of staff? Do you want to move premises? And looking ahead so that you can plan then for the future. Some people want to plan for retirement, so they want to put into pensions, but do you put into your pension personally from money that you've been taxed on when you've taken it from the company? Or does the company make contributions for you? You want a new car, should you buy it privately? Should you have it through the company as a benefit in kind? Are we putting through everything that we could be through the business, such as mobile phones? Are we putting some use of home as office? But you only find these things out when you talk to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, there are accountants out there who are cheaper than me, and there are accountants who are more expensive. And there are online-only accountants who are, I don't know how they operate at the prices they do, but they will not be asking questions. They won't be checking over clients' data for accuracy. They'll just be taking that software data, plugging it straight into the account software in the tax return, and pushing it back out. And that doesn't even give them the peace of mind that everything's done correctly.
Yeah.
So
it's such an important thing for all business owners to really understand and consider, is just how much are the numbers working for you, and are you getting from your labour everything that you could to move forward. So actually there's pros and do you think there's an education piece? Do you find sometimes when you're speaking to new clients and they've come from service that actually they're just going, I just don't know what I'm doing with my money? Yeah, is there a lot of education that needs to come in those early conversations, do you think?
There is, and there's also cutting out a lot of the jargon as well. So, like any profession, there's terminology that a layperson wouldn't really understand, and you wouldn't expect them to. So, I took a new client on. They've been operating as a limited company for a number of years, and they asked me on one of the initial conversations, because we had 2 or 3, I think, for them to get comfortable. Can I explain what a director's loan account is? Because their accountant couldn't really explain it to them in a way that they could understand. So that was almost a bit of a test. Can Nick explain something in plain English to me that I can
Yeah.
understand. So then anything else in the relationship, is he going to be able to communicate it so that I can understand what I'm doing?
Yeah.
And like you say, understanding your figures as well. So a lot of people don't realise that it's quite easy to track things like your gross profit. So your gross profit is your sales less your direct costs. So if you're manufacturing, you've got your sales of your goods, and then your direct costs are the costs of manufacturing those items. So the actual components, the materials, and the labour of producing them results in your gross profit. So we can have that as a percentage, and then we know that for every pound of sale, we have a gross profit left over of, let's say, 90 pence. But then we have all our overhead costs, which are our costs that aren't directly attributable to our sales. So you might have vehicles out on the road, you might have admin staff, your light and heat, your rent, accountancy, professional fees, legal fees, advertising, all of these costs. So that 90 pence that you've got as gross profit from each unit you've sold has got to cover all of those overhead costs.
Yeah.
And then you're at your net profit. And then you've still got to pay some tax to the taxman. So if you can communicate with business owners and they can understand the intricacies of the impact of a little change, it can go a long way.
Yeah.
So I met with a prospect at my last practice who, they were a motor repair garage, but they worked on sort of premium vehicles, and they were charging themselves out at the same hourly rate as the tyre fitters down the road. Now, I'm not discrediting tyre fitters at all, but these people were working on high-end motor vehicles where people are bringing them, Aston Martins, Audis, BMWs, instead of going to a main dealer. And the main dealer's going to be charging, £400 an hour labour?
Yeah.
And they were charging, £80 an hour. So sometimes it takes an outsider to come in to the business and say, look, this is a bit crazy, and we agreed to just test the waters, increase the hourly charge out rate by £5. And they'd got, I think, a team of 4 or 5 staff working, chargeable staff. And so they did it. They came back 2 months later and said, no one's mentioned a thing, everyone's paid the invoices, no one's even noticed. And so I did the maths, and it was something like, if they did 40 hours each and it was 4 or 5 staff and it was £5 an hour, it was like 28 grand on the bottom line for no extra effort.
Yeah. Just understanding your value again, isn't it?
And that's not £28,000 one off. That's year on year now.
Yeah.
Just because they hadn't realised the value that they were giving to customers. If I had one of those vehicles and I was going to them, obviously you'd keep quiet, wouldn't you? You're enjoying that cheap labour.
Yeah.
You're thinking, wow, they're amazing at what they do, and they only charge this.
Yeah.
Get loads of referrals, and then it's that story, like I said about Mark Wickersham.
Yeah.
You're a busy fool then.
Yeah.
You're working for less than you're worth.
Yeah.
And you're struggling to keep up with demand.
So the stuff that gets you really excited is that business growth bit. But you can actually, because you've got clear sight, haven't you? Because I guess I can definitely speak from my own experience. Like when you're running a business and you're really busy, you can get really blind to it. So like, where are we best placing our efforts? Where are we making money? Where's the profit coming? And it can feel a bit overwhelming. So it must feel so great to be able to go in and go, right, I've got clear sight. You can just see. Because I know when I go into another business and they're struggling with whatever, the brand story and marketing, I can see an answer for them. It's always harder to do it on your own. So is that the exciting space for you?
So you can get number blind in my job as well. So I started as a junior and worked my way up. And I've been there where I'm trying to find something on a job, but because I'm familiar, sounds silly, but familiar with the numbers, I've gone through them that much. Sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees, and then someone comes and looks over your shoulder and can just go, it's that there. So going into businesses and seeing where they're at, and it could be things as simple as telling a business owner, when did you last sit down and just have a look at 1 month's bank statement and look at all of those recurring direct debits and those subscriptions for products that you don't even use anymore. So I've had a client before who they'd moved from one accounting software to another, and they'd got 3 direct debits every single month for accounting software, and they were using one of them. And that could make a big difference.
Absolutely. What kind of questions do you think if like business owners like myself there were like a few questions you should ask yourself just so that you know whether you're on the right track or your accountancy is working for you, what would they be? So I know I've put you on the spot a little bit there.
Yeah.
Well, so if you were saying to me like, do I know whether I'm profitable enough? Like, what kind of things should I be looking at?
Okay, so first of all, depending on the business size, is to use some accounting software. And the beauty of that is it can automate processes for you, and also it's very quick and easy to run reports from. So when you've got a couple of years trading under your belt and you've got that data on your accounting software, you can run your profit and loss report to see your sales for a specific month or 3-month period or year if you want, and you can click and select to compare it to previous years. So the one thing I will tell everyone is whatever your charges are this year, they need to be more next year. And that's not if you're
bad at that.
That's not if you turned over 50k, let's try and get 60k. That is actually your national minimum wage rates are going up.
Yeah.
So even if you've got staff that are paid above national minimum wage, they'll want a pay rise that's somewhere around the national minimum wage percentage increase, which means you've got their wages increase, the employer's national insurance increase, the pension increase. So straight away you've got 3 costs that have increased. So if you don't up your project price, hourly rate, whatever metric you work to, you're going to be working for less money.
Yeah.
Inflation hits everyone. You know, I operate from home and it's just me, but insurance, software, telephone line, internet, everything, even like you're buying in your laptops and whatever, they all increase each year. So you need to be, the first thing for any business owner, the best piece of advice is review your pricing and increase it at least once a year.
Yeah.
The next thing is scope creep. So scope creep is where you're providing a service to a client and you might have clearly outlined what that service involves. The client might have a different understanding. So if you've got a contract or a letter of engagement that outlines your service, the minute you're asked to do some work that's outside of that term of agreement is to, contact the client and say, look, yeah, we're more than happy to do it for you, but actually it's not in the scope of the works that we've agreed, so the cost is going to be this. If you're happy with that, we'll crack on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really good advice.
Because if you're anything like me, you like to do right by people and you almost end up doing people a favour to your own detriment, so you end up doing more work than you should.
Clarity is really important, isn't it? Of communication at all times.
Yeah, so scope creep's big, and depending on your business model or size of the business, is communicating that down to your team as well. Yeah. Because they ultimately, I've been an employee for 17 years, so I'm used to getting my wage every month, regardless of what happens. Yeah. So the team will be used to getting their wage every month, regardless of what happens. So they might not be aware that actually the piece of work that the client's emailed them to do is outside of the scope of the fees. So if you can communicate to your team and be transparent with them about, okay, we've got this contract, this is what it involves. It doesn't involve social media, so if they ask you to help out on social media, let me know, let's price it, and then we can still do the work, but we need their consent before we do it. Yeah. Because no one likes surprise bills. Yeah, I've been in a profession where in a job where I needed to hit certain metrics, and if I hadn't billed people for a certain time, I was told to bill them. And then that client gets a bill on the doorstep, they weren't expecting, bad relationship starts. Yeah, absolutely. And then for that fee, you could cost yourself years of work for that client. Yeah. So prices go up every year, scope creep, sit down and look at your bank statement, see what costs are going out, and if they're costs that you're actually using. So one thing I'm seeing at the moment with the advancement of AI is lots of people are signing up to a lot of different AI softwares to test the waters. And then not using them. Either not using them or not culling the direct debit when they're not using them. Yeah. And talk to your suppliers and your customers as well. Because just because you've been priced something, especially insurance, we all know the scam of insurance, that you get your renewal through and it's higher and then you call them up and magically they've given you a 10-20% discount. And even things like, and I put my foot in it here, but accountancy. If you're paying the accountants to do a lot of work and they're doing the management accounts for you, so quarterly accounts, so that you can sit down and see how the business is doing, how it's performing. If you're getting that pack and you're not looking at it and you're not actually using it to create action points in your business, why bother paying for the service? Switch the service off. I've said to clients before with management accounts, if you want, let's do one, let's test the waters. If it's not of benefit, let's turn it off. I'm costing myself sales, but that again is building that trust that if you're not getting value from something.
And it's useful for people to hear as well, in terms of reflecting upon their own relationship with money and going through management accounts and really understanding the numbers so that they can plan for growth.
Yeah, and so you can use the softwares just to circle around. You can use the softwares to really see how you're performing this year versus last year.
Yeah.
You can do it month by month. You could do it, quarter by quarter. And then if your business, some businesses aren't seasonal, some are. So if you're seasonal, say you're an easy example, an ice cream seller, then the summer is going to be higher than the winter. So that if you've got low months at the start, it's to be expected and it will come good. Other businesses are very static.
Yeah.
So if all of a sudden you've got a drop, you need to be thinking, why have we got this drop, And the sooner you act, the sooner you can resolve the issue.
Yeah, climb back up again, yeah. No, that's really helpful. Thank you so much for that advice. It's been great talking to you. And I wish you every success with the business. I just know it's going to keep on growing because, it's that customer service and having the customer at the heart of everything. And really valuing the culture that you're developing is a brilliant values-led place to be. So, good luck with it all.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.